This is Greg Pass with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is March the 4th, 2022, and I am at Arlington National Cemetery. I have the pleasure of sitting down with Ryan James Pachall.
Correct, sir, yep.
All right. Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Can you give me your full name and where you're from?
Like you said, Ryan James Pachall. I'm from Portland, Oregon, a little bit far from here. Not quite used to the humidity, so that's made it very interesting. And I've spent most of my life on the West Coast before coming here.
So you have any military veterans in your family?
I do. My dad was in the United States Marine Corps, and then my great-grandpa, was in the Navy during World War II. He was a gunner on an airplane.
Outstanding. So what did your dad do in the Marine Corps?
He was a motor transport, so he drove I believe the term was LVS, the Dragon Wagon is what he called it, but he was in motor transport in the Marine Corps.
Outstanding. So what's your motivation? Why did you join the military?
I always wanted to join the military. Originally, I planned on doing it as an officer. That was what my dad had wanted me to do. I wanted to go on the enlisted side. I had always heard it was a little bit more hands-on than the officer side. And then it just came down to choosing whether I was going to go into the Army or the Marine Corps. When I talked to both the recruiters, I decided that I was going to go with the Army route. I wanted to be an infantryman, and I knew they could guarantee me that, whereas the Marine Corps couldn't. And then I inevitably wanted to go to Ranger School and Ranger Assessment Selection Program to be part of the 75th Ranger Regiment, so that's what drew me to the Army.
And what year was it that you enlisted?
2020. August 2020 is when I joined, I believe, or that's when I got to Fort Benning. I had enlisted 3 months prior to that in May or June.
Gotcha. So Benning, is that one station unit training for infantry?
Yes, so I spent the first 9-10 weeks there in basic training with the same unit that I went on to complete my second half of infantryman training there. So we were there for 6 months. On Fort Benning Sand Hill.
Right, and then where did you go from there?
From there, I went directly here to Fort Myer. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to go to the 75th Ranger Regiment. However, with COVID, it was a little bit more backed up and there were fewer slots. Unfortunately, I didn't get a slot to go to Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. So when I came here, that's kind of why I came down to the tomb, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more later, but I wanted to challenge myself.
Back up a little bit. Have you ever been to Arlington prior to your enlistment?
I have. When I was a freshman in high school, it was the summer leading into my freshman year. My family and I came out here during the summertime on vacation. We spent some time in Pennsylvania up at Gettysburg, Annapolis at the Naval Academy in Maryland, and then some time here in DC, including a few days here in Arlington National Cemetery, which I actually did get to see the guard change.
So what are your memories from that?
I remember coming here and I didn't quite know what to make of it. However, with my dad's prior military experience, I remember him being quite in awe of this place and impressed by them and their ceremonial composure, which made an impact on me. If my dad had thought they were very impressive, then I thought they were very impressive, which led to me wanting to come here later on.
So at some point you decide you want to be here. Let's talk about a little bit what the process is on how you can become a guard at the tomb.
So for some people, they spend a little bit time in the regiment up top and the other ceremonial units, whether that is conducting funerals day in and day out here in the cemetery or whether they're on the drill team. For me, it was a little bit different. I came here and on my first day in processing on the regiment, the sergeant of the guard at the time, Sergeant First Class Deal, he was the assistant sergeant of the guard at the time, Sergeant Deal. He came to me and recruited from the fellow soldiers being in process with me and asked if any of us wanted to volunteer to come try out for the tomb. I was the only one who volunteered, so on my first day here in the regiment, I was then put in a holding until I could come to the tomb tryout, which was inevitably a month later. From there, I got a tryout, and then after passing my tomb guard assessment and selection, I came down to the unit and began my 3-week TDY period.
And talk about what the TDY is. What type of understanding you have to memorize
Correct.
knowledge. Tell us a little bit about that.
So for your 3-week TDY period, it's a temporary duty assignment. You are down here working a normal day schedule from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're giving you knowledge to memorize, to test if you're going to be able to memorize that later on down the road when they give you more of it. They only give you 3 pages at first, and eventually you're going to have to work your way up to 17. They also teach you the basics of rifle manual and some of the movements that we're going to have to do down here, as well as teaching us the basics of uniform. So they pay attention to whether you're putting the effort in, as well as if they think you have the potential to make it through training when they let you into the platoon.
So how long do you have to practice and train until you're testing?
For the TDY or so for the TDY, it differs. Generally about 2 weeks, and you have people, typically the assistant sergeant of the guard, watching over you at the time as you're doing everything. Nothing you do down here during the TDY you will do on your own. They kind of guide you through it. They give you a little leeway to see if you're able to handle it on your own, but you have about 2 weeks until they evaluate you on how much you've learned and how much effort you've put into what you're doing.
Now that 2 weeks, obviously there's another testing that happens after that, right? With the full, was it 17 pages of knowledge or whatever?
Yes, so after that you get into the full testing process.
And how long does that take to do that on average?
Generally 9 months to a year. It differs with COVID. It was a little bit longer due to just the way the platoon was working and how people had been separated into their reliefs, more consolidated. But for the average tomb guard, it'd be 9 to 12 months. That would be test 1, test 2, full rotation, and badge.
What did you find to be the most challenging about that process?
I think for me definitely was working up to test 1. It's when you're trying to get out the door for the first time. So until you get out the door for the first time, you can't test. So you're trying to earn your walks or you're trying to earn your wreaths. Everything you do down here is earned. What we do down here is meritoriously based. Nothing is given, everything is earned. And so until you're able to show that you have a good enough uniform and a good enough outside performance and a good enough understanding of your knowledge in the cemetery, they're not going to give you that chance to go outside. And once you get there, everything is uphill from there. Or at least once you see that progression and success in yourself, it motivates you to keep going. So once I passed that wall of first getting outside, it was a lot more motivating for me to continue on through my training process.
So I've been lucky enough to be able to spend a couple days with you guys, and I've heard the word earned a lot as opposed to assigned, which is probably a little unusual in most jobs. Can you explain the difference between earning your walk and just giving it an assignment?
Yeah, so with the unknown soldiers out there all being recipients of the Medal of Honor, all giving more than what they were expected to give. They gave the supreme sacrifice, not just the ultimate sacrifice. They no longer have an identity. What we do down here, we take a lot of pride into to represent the highest standards of the United States, the American military, and what we do down here as a platoon. Anything we do outside is videotaped. It's represented to other nations when they come here. And like myself, when I came here as a young kid to the United States public, everything we do is seen. And so for us to give anything less than our full effort and strive for perfection would be a dishonor to those who are buried there that we're protecting. So it brings me back to earned, not given. If you were to give something, someone might not have worked their hardest or strived for perfection to get outside. And so that's why day in and day out, every person you'll talk to down here is giving their 110%, trying to prove or trying to give trying to give every last devotion and respect to those buried there.
Arlington National Cemetery is definitely unique in the American landscape. What do you think makes this place so special?
I think beyond just the history, it's the people who are here. Obviously, no one veteran buried here is more important than the other in terms of the service that they gave. Everyone served here. However, there are historically really cool people here. Some of my favorites being John F. Kennedy, obviously the Eternal Flame. I think that's probably one of my favorite points here in the Arlington National Cemetery, because most people don't know that the Eternal Flame was drawn inspiration by Jacqueline Kennedy from the French Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That, as well as some of the Medal of Honor recipients here, John Basilone, the Marine who served in World War II. And then beyond just that, the tracing back to the Civil War and how Arlington National Cemetery came to be.
So, doing the math in my head, you're 21, 22?
I'm 20, sir, yep.
20, okay. So, 20 years old is pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like to be a 20-year-old, and you're in the middle of all this history and having the honor and the privilege to participate in something as important as this? What's that feel like?
I don't think I'll quite have the chance to appreciate it until I've left this place. I try to appreciate it as much as I can now. However, with the work schedule and me being so focused on the mission 24/7, trying to do the best I can, I really don't think until I've gained some separation from this place that I'll truly be able to appreciate the full capacity of what I'm doing and who I've got to meet and what I've got to see as far as it comes to the visitors we have here and the veterans that I've been able to meet. So as much as it means to me now, which I'm forever grateful, like anytime I'm out on the plaza, I genuinely don't think I'll ever be able to truly grasp that, especially being as young as I am.
So let's back up a few months. So last year, I understand you guys had a pretty significant event. Can you tell us a little bit about the anniversary and your role in that?
The Centennial? So I was on first relief for the Centennial. We actually got to work the first day of the Rose Lane ceremony as well as the Centennial event, which for me I felt was very lucky, given that some people in the platoon didn't get to work for any of those events, let alone two of them. It was very special, I think, more on the Rose Lane aspect as opposed to the Centennial itself, just because of the fact that the American public was able to come on the plaza. And for me, that was the most important part of the weekend, because that's what the tomb was always supposed to be. For the first 4 years, the tomb was unguarded and the American public could come and pay their respects. And whether or not they had a loved one who was missing or someone that they knew was missing, they were able to come and get close up and personal with the unknown. And for the American public to be able to do that again so many years later, 96 years later, was very touching to me.
So I understand you had a whole bunch of different groups and VIPs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with me some of the VIPs and veterans groups that you saw?
Well, I know the Crow Nation came. They were the first to come by the tomb. I unfortunately wasn't out there at the time to be able to see them. However, I was out there for a lot of the veteran groups that came by, and you get to see them when the honor flights come and lay wreaths. However, I could tell that it meant a lot more to them being this close as opposed to watching from behind the chains, because there was more of a personal connection. They could lay the rose on top of the crypt as opposed to having to watch from afar. And there was a lot of tears and just a lot more up close and personal feel, which always changes things. And so I think that the veteran associations coming to take part in this was the most impactful for me on that aspect.
The Crow Nation, what's the relation with the Crow Nation and the site?
So during the internment of the World War I unknown, Chief Plentycoop was actually in attendance, and we have it here in the memorial display room just just up top the stairs from the tomb, he placed his coup sticks and his Crow war bonnet on top of the tomb. To me, that was the most symbolic or most important thing that the unknown was given, besides the military awards, because of the symbolism it represented. Everything else the unknown was bestowed was a military award, and for Chief Plentycoop to go out of his way to come and bestow those things upon the unknown meant a lot to the American public at the time and those in attendance. And so the Crow Nation paying homage to the World War I unknown, the Crow Nation paying homage to the World War I unknown and coming back 100 years later to honor that was very significant.
So during the ceremonies, I understand that the government gave a lot more access to the public. Tell us about what changed during the ceremony and how much more access people had, just a run-of-the-mill guy that walks in like me, versus how it's being played out throughout the rest of the year.
Well, from day to day here, the public will not be able to cross the chains and rails. They're either on the white steps or to the north and south side behind the chains while watching the guard change. During the rose ceremony, they were actually able to walk onto the plaza where we conduct guard changes day in and day out. We had adjusted the mat to be down below the stairs so they could walk up right in front of the tomb and actually get right in front of the World War I, World War II, and Korean War unknowns who are still interred there, and lay a flower. They filed from the north side to the south side as they did that, and they were a lot closer to us more than usual. So that was the big difference for me, was seeing people's faces up close and personal and getting to see their emotions and reactions and the respects that they were paying.
And how long did the public have access to do that?
I believe from the time the cemetery opened to the time the cemetery closed, the VIPs, like you were talking about earlier, they came in right as the cemetery opened, and then right around 9 a.m., I believe, was when the American public started to come in after the VIPs up until around 4:30 p.m., right before the cemetery closed. It was for 2 days.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. So I understand too that you guys had to move your operations a little bit to allow this to happen. Explain how that worked, and did it work out well for you?
Normally, we do the full guard change. It takes about 10 minutes. During the Rose Lane ceremonies, we did what we call post ones. Basically, the guard and the changer are just coming out, walking straight to the other guard in that green box you see there on the plaza, doing a quick inspection, making sure he's good to go, and then posting him on the mat. So that way, the public had the most time to go on to the plaza as they could. And then there was the flowers. So as the public laid flowers with the thousands of people coming, eventually the flowers piled up. So we had to make sure that we were constantly keeping room for others to come and lay more flowers. So we're moving the flowers as well as making sure that the other military personnel and volunteers that were out there guiding the public were changed out and making sure that what they needed they were getting.
Obviously, when you're guarding the tomb, you're focused on one mission. You're not having conversations with other people. There comes about times though that you are able to have conversations with the public. Were you able to mingle with the public at all during the ceremony?
I was able to talk with the veterans a little bit. I didn't spend as much time outside as I would have liked to because I was continuing the mission downstairs. However, the veterans that I did get to talk to were very, very powerful on me. A lot of them were Vietnam veterans, given that they still have some fellow service members overseas that have not come home yet. And for them, they had told me that this was probably one of the most powerful things that they had ever done in their lifetime, being able to pay respect. Many don't know that the Vietnam Crypt says honoring and keeping faith with America's missing servicemen. There's no longer anyone in there. However, the crypt does pay tribute to all those who have not yet come home from Vietnam. So that was by far the most powerful group of people that I got to talk to on those days.
So how long have you been working here? How long have you had the honor to guard the tomb?
I've been down here since April of 2021, so I believe a little over 10 months now, right around 10 months.
What are some of your fondest memories?
By far, my first walk, first time getting to go out on the plaza and protect the unknowns. And then right there with it, I genuinely couldn't pick a first, but right there with it would be the Centennial in the Rose Lane ceremony. I forgot to touch on this earlier with the public coming onto the plaza, but there was actually a little boy when I was out there during the Rose Lane ceremony who had walked away from his family and walked towards me, towards the stairs. So he had walked past where the public was supposed to lay the rose, and I thought for a second that I was going to have to break him off and tell him to go back to his family or tell his family to come retrieve him and make their way off the plaza. However, he stopped right at the edge of the stairs, and after he laid his rose separate from all the other roses, he looked up and he waved at me. And he waved at me and smiled. And I had never seen anything like that before, let alone had the opportunity to, because the public is so far away. So that was by far one of the craziest, most I'd say exciting, because you get adrenaline when that happens. You think you're about to break someone off, and then one of the more touching things in your career down here happens. So that I think about that a lot, actually.
You mentioned your career here. What's the average? How long can somebody expect to be assigned here?
I think the average tenure, the average stay down here is about 1.5 to 2 years. Whether that be a little longer or a little shorter depends on your Army career, and say you come down on orders, or if you have to go, if you intend to stay longer, So 1.5 to 2 years.
Gotcha. Badge holders.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to us what a badge holder is, and do you have to be a badge holder to actually guard the tomb?
So I'll start with, you don't have to be a badge holder to guard the tomb. That's actually part of the training process on your way to getting the badge, is displaying proficiency and expertise outside, and the ability to train others how to do that and how to guard the unknowns. Now it brings me back to the badge holder and what it means to be a badge holder. Badge holder basically is someone who has proven that they are proficient in teaching the next batch of tomb guards and proficient in meeting the standard of perfection, or at least striving for or coming as close as one can to perfection, whether that be inside, outside, or in their knowledge, and elaborating their knowledge to others and informing those of that knowledge. They're well-rounded individuals who, in any one of the 3 areas that we are graded on down here, are experts.
And how long does it take to earn that badge on average?
9 months to a year on average to earn the Tomb Guard badge.
Are you on your way to earn it?
I am currently testing full rotation, which is one test below the badge level. So I'm towards the end of my testing process down here.
Outstanding. Is that exciting?
Yes, sir. It's very exciting. I think not just because of how rare, how hard I've worked for it, but what it means I've put in for those outside who are buried on the plaza.
So we can't see it in the film, but just a few steps from us, on the wall has the names of previous badge holders, and I don't know how many there are. You might know off the top of your head. How many are there?
There's 696 on the wall. We currently have 697 past badge.
Gotcha. Off camera too, we have the privilege of having somebody right now who's 18, 19? 19. How exciting is that, to be able to think that you're your name might be up on that wall.
It's very exciting. Of course, I've still got to work and finish those last few steps to get there. However, every time I go out the door, I get a chance to see that before I go out, and to think I am that close to earning a title and earning my place on a wall of such a amazing group of hardworking individuals who are dedicated to something more important to themselves is surreal.
So you have a chance to talk with the members of the public from time to time. If later on this afternoon you run into a high school class out here and there's a young man or woman says, hey, this is pretty cool, I want to do this, what advice would you give them on how to be able to have the honor of serving here?
I think first, obviously, it would be to join the Army if they wanted to do this. From there, it would be to volunteer for the Old Guard. I know the Old Guard takes volunteers, and so you can be put on orders to here. It doesn't matter the MOS. We have anything from cooks to motor transport to medics down here, military police as well, and then infantrymen like myself. And then once you get to the Old Guard, it would be to volunteer. And once you do volunteer for the tomb, put in everything you have and give nothing less, and you could find yourself out there guarding the unknowns.
So obviously we're videoing right now. In a few weeks, you'll receive a digital copy. You'll also be given instructions on how to send your video across the Potomac here to the Library of Congress for the Veterans History Project. That video theoretically will sit there for hundreds of years. So your grandkids might see it. What would you want them to know about your service to your country?
If I would ask for them to know anything about my service to the country, it wouldn't be that this was for me or for wouldn't be for me, it would be for them. I don't yet know if I will continue my Army career after my first contract, which I will spend the entirety of it here. That being said, if that is, I did it for the unknowns out there and what they represent to the country. They represent those who haven't made it back home from war, or they've died at war, and my service was to those who gave more than I or some of my coworkers ever could give.
Well said. Ryan, did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you wanted to document?
I think you got it all.
Richard?
The only question is you got it. I always ask this question. Is there a question? Okay, you've done it. I want you to take a deep breath. Okay. Is there a question that you wanted to have asked of you, that you hoped that I would ask, that would allow you to say something that you really didn't quite get out yet? And the only thing to prompt you, the only thing I can think of, me, is when you communicated very well the power of the experience. What was it that they were doing? For example, the Vietnam veterans, when they said this was most, what did they do? What did they say to you that made it so powerful for you?
Okay. So should I carry into that? I don't think it was what the Vietnam veterans or any veterans said so much as what they didn't say. When they were on the plaza, I saw a lot of tears, and for me to see adults cry in public, which I don't think the average person would see very often, openly weeping or praying or taking a knee, had the most powerful impact. People can say things and people can do things, but it's often what's unsaid that is more powerful than words themselves.
Well said. You nailed it.
Thank you, sir.
Well, on behalf of the museum, I thank you for spending the time with us today. More importantly, thank you for your service.
Thank you,
It's a
sir.
pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well.